Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. Just making another video for all of you Insomniacs who want to review a little bit of velocity banking before we all go to sleep. Right now it's 1:41 a.m. for me, so gonna do a little bit of study and there's a saying that repetition is the mother of all learning. So if we study a little bit every single day, even before we go to sleep, we're going to master a subject. And the subject we're going to master today is velocity banking. So what is velocity banking? All it is debt payoff strategy using lines of credit as your main tool. And you only need two things to do it. Number one is the budget. So we have the budget here: income, expenses, your leftover savings, and then if we look at the expense breakdown, we have to list out every single debt that we have, because debt is essentially a hole in our cash flow bucket, right? Think of your cash flow as like a bucket, and the water is your income, right? And then you have holes that are your debt, and we're trying to patch them up. So all you could think of velocity banking as a debt payoff strategy. And if you have no debt, there's no reason to do velocity banking, right? So okay, now we have a budget and we have a $6,000 a month income. I think in pretty much every single state, that's $100,000 gross, right? Or close to every single state. Maybe California and New York might be a little bit different, but here, if you have, if you make about $6,000 a month after tax, that's about $100,000, almost exactly $100,000 a year. All right, so now what we need is a line of credit as our main operating account. So, a lot of people have HELOCs, but they use them wrong, right? Because they don't use it as their main operating account. Here we're going to use a line of credit as our main operating account. And what's a line of credit? All is a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay back, and then use it over and over again. So if you have a credit card, that's a one type of line of credit, but there's also other types of lines of credit, such as personal home equity. Home equity is basically the value of your home. Like if you're going to put a for sale sign today, minus all of the debts tied to your home, right? So think of this home equity line of credit as a value is like kind of like a credit card based on the value of your home. But the cool thing about the home equity is that you can use it to pay anything, right? You can use it to pay credit cards, auto loans, mortgage. If you use a credit card as your main operating account, can you use it to pay off other credit cards or auto loans and mortgages? No, you can't do that, right? So that's what's going to happen with our line of credit. It's going to be a main operating account, and let's just assume, okay, let's just assume that we have about $35,000 in available to use as a home equity line of credit at a 10% interest rate. Okay, now the number one thing that we assume is that we're going to do the exact opposite of what most Americans are taught. So here we have a respectable monthly savings. So if you actually have $400 for an emergency, you're better off than the average American. So this person's doing really well, right? But we're going to do the exact opposite of what Dave Ramsey teaches: is that we're not going to have $1,000 of savings. In fact, we're going to have zero, right? This is the hardest thing for most people. You tell most people, hey, after every single month, I'm gonna have zero savings, and I'm totally okay with that. They'd be like freaking out. I was like, no, man, you have savings. And actually, let me do a quick search on this. Right, if I take a look at this community feed, where's my community feed? If I go into here and then I click community, you could see my last checking summary, which is I started off with $0 and then I ended off with $0 because I refused to have savings. Who needs savings, right? Your line of credit when you do Velocity Bank is essentially your new savings account, right? All right, so now we also assume we have the same income, okay? And the way that we think of expenses is mostly going to be the same, except that our home equity line of credit is going to be our main, what we call velocity banking account, main operating account. Okay. And instead of savings, we're going to have something called cash flow. So it's going to be the same number in the beginning, but our savings is going to be zero. And then our goal is to increase this number as much as possible and we can only increase this number by having zero savings. Okay, so let's do this. Let's move these 3 credit cards into a line of credit, right? So this is going to be 30,000. Okay, so 30,000 is moved to that 35,000 home equity line of credit. And then what happens to these payments? 0, 0, 0. And now we went from 1,700 to 2,600 without doing anything. Now, how are we able to do that? It's because we make our home equity line of credit as our main operating account. And so the actual implementation of this velocity banking strategy is you're putting your entire paycheck into the line of credit, expenses out of that line of credit, and then after every single month, it's going to go down. The balance is going to go down about $2,600 plus the interest, right? So when you put your entire paycheck into the line of credit, it does two things. It satisfies the minimum monthly payment, so that monthly payment doesn't really matter anymore. And then number two, it minimizes the interest because the interest is calculated by the average daily balance. Okay, so now let's go ahead and figure out how long it's going to take to pay off these 3 credit cards right here when we transfer into that home equity line of credit. And I'm blown away. And here's the thing, before I start doing this, I'm blown away that we turned $1,700 into $2,600 without doing anything, right? We didn't make more money. We just made our line of credit as our main operating account. And so now we're going to calculate the next month's balance, which is the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus our cash flow, which is 2,685.73. Okay. And then we got to add the interest. So we get this. There's this Excel formula right here with the interest times 0.1. So 10%, and then you divide by 12. Okay. So every single month we have to pay a little bit of interest. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we see that in 12 months, right? 12 months, we paid this all off. Okay. So now 12 months to pay off 30K. Amazing. All right. So now we have to pay off this auto loan or mortgage. Which one would you choose? I would choose this auto loan just because it's going to free up more cash flow compared to the what's it called, balance of the auto loan. And we should figure out what the current balance is after 12 months. So auto loan is usually 5 years. So after we should probably be here year one balance 1,800. So after, we'll say it's 17, right? Or maybe 18 after end of year one. Yeah, we'll just say 18. Okay. Again, I'll probably be off 1 month or so. All right. So that's the current balance. And so think about this. Would you pay $18,000 to get $415 back, or would you pay about around $200,000 to get $1,200 back, right? So which one gives you more bang for your buck? It's this auto loan, which is why we focus on it first. And that's also this derives from the idea of the cash flow index. Now it's really late right now for me, so I'm not going to go over the whole thing over and over again, but just Google cash flow index, Garrett Gunderson, Wealth Factory. It goes into much better detail than I would. But basically, I'm paying off this auto loan first because of the cash flow that it gives me when I pay it off. All right. So now let's just do this. Let me just calculate that cash flow index, which is a formula of the balance 18027.78 divided by 78 divided by 415.17. All right. So usually if this number is about 30 or 20, the lower it is, the better. 40, it actually says on the website below 50 you should pay it off, but I'm always a little bit hesitant about 50 and 40, but it doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and do this. So we'll just do 18,000. We're going to move that into our line of credit, right? So let's just dump it into our line of credit. Dump it. It's like one of those Family Guy jokes where he just says a funny word and then he just laughs at himself for no reason. Okay, so we dumped this 18 grand into that line of credit, and now what? Well, this gets paid off, so this now goes to 0, and then it goes to 3100.9. So let's see how long it takes us to pay off 3100.9. All right, did I? All right. Okay. So it took us about 18 months to pay off that car debt. All right. So the sweet 18 months to pay off 52K. Now, the last thing we got to pay off is the mortgage. Okay. So now let's go ahead and go over this and figure out what the balance is after 18 months for that $200,000 loan. 30 and then 6%. All right. And so now after 18 months, what's the balance here? And I'll have to bring out the financial TVM calculator, time value of money calculator, because it's actually more easier to do it, use that calculator and do it this way. But again, I'm really sleepy right now, and I'm just cranking one out for all of you insomniacs who want to learn a little bit of velocity banking before you go to sleep. But all right, so now it's $196,259. And unless this line of credit were magically lower than this $196,000, okay, if it were lower than the $196,000 or the interest rate, yeah, I say put in the whole thing in the line of credit if you can. But if you have a higher interest line of credit and you put the whole thing, transfers $196,000 into that line of credit, that probably will be a big mistake. So what you do is if you want to over simulate, let's say paying it off with all of your extra cash, but without the downsides, because what's the downside of overpaying a loan? You can never get the money back. And also, if you put all your money into one place in a line of credit, it prevents something called the segregation of income effect, which is really powerful. Okay, so now this is what we're going to do. We're going to use this velocity banking calculator provided by Renatus, which is where I first learned velocity banking from. And I am a independent contracted marketer for Renatus. And I don't know if you knew this, but I actually sell their products. And this whole website, well, not even a website, YouTube channel is a funnel for Renatus products. I don't know if you knew that, but anyways, so let's go ahead and calculate how long it will take us to pay off um, the mortgage. And the whole idea of this is you're going to just transfer chunks of the what's it called, mortgage. So let's say we transfer 10K into that line of credit, and this becomes 186K, right? How long? So if you go here, okay. So let's just do this, and then we transfer 10,000. Okay. How long? Let's see. Oh, whoops! I gotta add the 10,000 here. My bad. How long is it gonna take to pay off that 10,000? In about 3 months. But if you take a look at the amortization schedule, so let's say we're going to go from 196 to 186, right? It took us 3 months or 2 months. I don't even know. I'm one, two, about three, about two, really. But let's see how long it takes. It goes to 186, more than a year, more than 2 years, more than something, about three and a half, right? So again, easy way to pay off the principal. You just rinse and repeat over and over again. And that's kind of the idea of this calculator. Now, this calculator is actually better than the way I'm showing it to you because when you do it this way, this isn't actually taking into account the balance going down because of the monthly payment. That's a little bit more complicated to calculate, which is why this calculator was made. 2000, but luckily all I got to do is plug and play. All right, so now, okay, interest rate 6%, 30 years, 1199.1. And I've memorized these numbers so much because I do this all the time. And there's that Bruce Lee saying, I fear the man who does one kick 10,000 times. And that's what every single velocity banking video is me doing the same thing over and over again. And all right, so let's put our income. So our income is about $6,000. And our expenses is everything except for the loan. So it's 1,700. And then we'll put the chunk amount, which is the amount that we transfer to the line of credit, to 6,000 at 10%. And then you can see here that it takes us 4.4 years to pay it off. 4.4 years. Okay. Now let's say that we change this to 10 grand. 10000. You'll notice that even though the years increase, right? Or I mean, it's the years payoff stays the same. This slightly increases, right? So that's why you don't want to move too much money, especially if you're a lower interest loan to a higher interest line of credit. What you want to do is just move it into pieces, okay? And then the next thing is, let's see what happens when we transfer this entire thing into the line of credit. You'll see the amount of interest that we pay doubles. 196,259.73, right? So you don't want to mindlessly, what's it called? Just turn every single loan you have into a line of credit just because the internet tells you to do that. All right, well, so 4.4 years right here. So now let's go ahead and calculate the final payoff. So 18 divided by 12 plus 4.4, which is 5.9 years. Whoopsie. 5.9 years. Debt free. Whoopsie. Not DBE. It's a stand for Dragon Ball. You know, random comment. Honestly, I don't even know what's going on in Dragon Ball anymore because there's so many. Like, I thought the last Dragon Ball was Dragon Ball, the Majin Buu series, and then they came out with the GT, and then they kind of said, "Oh, that never happened," and then they came with all this other stuff like Super, and I was just like, I'm done. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're probably better off. All right, so 5.9 years debt free, and $252,000 of debt, right? Now, what's crazy is in this day and age, there's a lot of people who make decent income and are willing to pay for a home at $400,000. That's insane. $400,000. You know who the person, if you buy a home at $400,000, the only person who basically won is it's the real estate agent and the seller. Like if you buy a home at $400,000, you got to make really good income to essentially make it worth it, right? Just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should, or afford it on paper doesn't mean you should buy it. I would never buy a $400,000 home. I would certainly buy a $300,000 home for a $100,000 discount. Now, if you want to know about that, that's what we sell the Renatus educational courses for. Anyways, so now we've paid out $252,000 in less than 6 years. Again, it's not 6 years to pay the mortgage, it's 6 years to pay all of your debt. And that's why the strategy is so amazing. It gives you an easy way to be debt free. And then what else? Well, once you paid off all the debt, you're gonna have what I call rich people problems. So rich people, so if I do this, have something called savings, right? But but once they build enough savings, they get a little bit nervous because it's like, oh my goodness, I'm losing out to inflation, and the interest rate isn't really that great, right? And so that's why a lot of rich people, they love to partner up on projects in general because they just want to sit down and see the money grow and see how someone else like do all the hard work, right? So something to think about if you weren't aware about rich people problems. All right. Well, this is Korean Atlanta Mentorship. Have a great day, and we will speak next time.